everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for attending this press conference on REDD+ alert, and will the UN fold REDD+ into the Article 6 Global Offset Scheme? My name is Tamra Gilbertson. I'm the Climate Justice Program Coordinator of the Indigenous Environmental Network, and I'm going to moderate this discussion. So thank you all for being here today. Since REDD+'s inception in 2007, we've witnessed a deeply flawed and problematic scheme that continues to negatively impact the lives of Indigenous peoples. It also fails to stop deforestation, and it does not reduce emissions. What we're deeply concerned about here in Bonn is how REDD+, which is enshrined in Article 5 of the Paris Agreement, is being discussed as a possible carbon offset that could be used in Article 6.4, the global offset scheme that's being negotiated, or the global offsets mechanism. And that's being negotiated underneath the supervisory body that will continue to be negotiated throughout the rest of this year and other intersessional work. And this is also something that we'll see in COP29 in Baku. So it's really an urgent discussion, which is not being had. So by including something as deeply problematic as REDD+ inside of the UN the Paris Agreement, Article 6.4, undermines not only the integrity of forest, but also the rights of Indigenous peoples and free, prior, and informed consent. This is not climate action. This is more of the same business-as-usual tactics, market-led flaws, and false solutions that we've witnessed now for years. I'm honored to introduce the panel of speakers today. The first speaker will be Ninua Inu Hunikwi, who is the hereditary chief of the Hunikwi people and president of the Hunikwi Federation. He serves as the deputy director at the Institute Inu and is affiliated with the Indigenous Environmental Network. He's the representative of the Gran Consejo Aguila y Condor, and he is internationally and nationally recognized leader of movements in defense of the Amazon. The second speaker today will be Tatiana Oliveira, who is the policy advisor and climate change specialist with the Institute of Socioeconomic Studies in Brazil. And finally, we have Souparna Lahiri, who's the Senior Climate and Biodiversity Policy Advisor of the Global Forest Coalition and has been attending UN climate and biodiversity processes for over 20 years. I'm very honored to be able to moderate this discussion with this excellent panel, and I would ask that we please hold questions until the end. Thank you. So we'll start with Nina.
Quero agradecer o Grande Espírito por esse momento, né, as pessoas que têm acompanhado. Eu venho aqui para falar um pouco da experiência de quem vive dentro de uma comunidade e os impactos que tem vivenciado no dia a dia junto com a nossa comunidade.
So I will translate. Thank you for the great spirit for this moment. I come to share with you the experience of people from the territory.
Hoje eu participo há muito tempo das conferências sobre o clima para poder entender o que instituições tão importantes como as Nações Unidas e outros órgãos que têm participado dessa conferência, para poder entender qual o nível de consciência que as pessoas que tomam as decisões estão nesse momento, principalmente tendo a preocupação com a vida das pessoas.
We come to participate in the climate conference meetings to understand how this conference works and the level of consciousness people here have of protecting the lives of peoples in territory.
Eu ainda tenho muita dificuldade de entender porque os mecanismos que são apresentados hoje, a metodologia de trabalhar a preservação da vida, a proteção do meio ambiente, da biodiversidade, ainda não está muito claro para a nossa comunidade, que sofre impacto constantemente.
I have difficulties to understand it because the negotiation, because all mechanisms and initiatives to protect the life and forest and biodiversity is not clear enough to our people.
Apesar de ter muitas discussões a nível mundial, não tem mudado para melhor a vida das pessoas que dependem da natureza. Todo mundo depende da natureza. Né? O programa de REDD+, por exemplo, que quer dizer que quer reduzir as emissões poluentes do nosso planeta, tem aumentado aceleradamente, não tem reduzido. As regiões de onde eu venho, a região do bioma amazônico, tem comunidades que estão sofrendo com falta de acesso à água. No período da chuva, são grandes inundações, muitas doenças surgindo dentro das comunidades indígenas e não indígenas que vivem na floresta por conta das contaminações. Não tem se reduzido. É por isso que esse modelo de preservação, de discutir aqui, não está servindo. Por isso que nós dizemos, está muito claro para nós, que há uma propaganda falsa para a humanidade. Não vai resolver o problema do nosso planeta, porque são as mesmas companhias que estão poluindo, são as mesmas que estão pagando pelas compensações, são as mesmas que estão sendo eximidos da sua responsabilidade, da sua culpa, pelo problema que está causando à humanidade.
Besides all the ongoing conversation in the international level, we see no concrete results to make people's life a better life. REDD+, for instance, those kind of projects do not reduce emissions. We can see that they are increasing emissions. And while our communities are suffering, for example, from water access and health issues related to climate, we have to deal with contamination every day in our territories. So these model of preservation do not work. This model of preservation does not work for us. It does not work for our people. Those are just false marketing solutions. It's greenwashing. Because the same polluting companies, they only pay for their pollution and do not actually take responsibility for polluting the world.
Só um exemplo muito rápido do que foram negativo nas nossas comunidades, com esses mecanismos que são tratados nas conferências, como a COP, por exemplo. O programa de REDD, quando chegou no Acre, ele fez uma grande divisão aos líderes indígenas, comunidades indígenas. Então, as comunidades não entendem, porque não houve um modelo de consulta, ninguém explicou para a comunidade que programa é esse, quem seria verdadeiramente os beneficiados, quem paga por isso. E, além dessa divisão, o estado de onde eu venho, que é o estado do Acre, tem constituído um novo modelo de colonização dos nossos territórios para fazer as negociações com os créditos de carbono, com as companhias, com os governos. E isso recentemente, na COP 28, agora em Dubai, o governo do meu estado assina um acordo de jurisprudência que o Estado está fazendo o domínio das terras que já são protegidas para fazer a negociação com crédito de carbono, que são territórios indígenas, reservas extrativistas, parques nacionais, parques nacionais mesmo, né? Tem se sobrepondo negociações em cima de negociações. Esse é um novo modelo de colonizar esses territórios. e tenta criminalizar as pequenas comunidades como se fossem as maiores destruidoras. Não se coloca no Brasil em evidência o agronegócio, né, o garimpo, também que estão fazendo essa destruição, que são as mesmas companhias que têm pagado por isso. Muito obrigado. Mais um. Também é contraditório no meu estado o trabalho de proteção, porque mesmo fazendo as compensações com o mecanismo de REDD, por exemplo, o próprio governo coloca um plano de manejo florestal sustentável que tem acabado com as madeiras da floresta para fazer exportação.
Just to give you an example of a negative consequence for our communities resulting from the mechanisms coming out of this space, REDD+ has caused division and fragmentation to our communities. My state, the Brazilian state of Acre, has been establishing a new kind of colonization model over our territories to trade carbon offsets. In Dubai, for instance, my state's government has signed a jurisdiction contract, project contract to trade carbon offsets produced over protected areas. Along with this, we have been criminalized, government has been criminalizing small communities as destructive livelihoods. At the same time, agribusiness, illegal mining are not taking any responsibility for the damaging they are causing to peoples and the environment. Also, it is widely contradictory that my state work in protecting the forest allows carbon offset projects associated with lodging, for example. Yeah, that's it. I thought you would announce me. That's okay. So again, I'm Tatiana Oliveira, policy advisor at the Institute of Socioeconomic Studies, a Brazilian human rights NGO. I was asked to approach this intended interconnectedness of REDD+ carbon projects going under Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement from a Brazilian standpoint. As you may know, Brazilian Amazon region has been the setting of a growing number of forest conservation projects geared toward generating carbon credits through REDD+ projects. In our view, though, REDD+ carbon projects and contracts, they fail to prove additionality, and this can explain its repeatedly reported failed results concerning its contribution to decarbonization. They grow the risk of double counting. They prevent indigenous peoples from carrying out their traditional practices, such as farming or felling trees for subsistence purposes without the company's clearance, meaning companies start intervening directly in territorial management and therefore in the livelihoods of populations. They also bind the communities for more than a generation and do not contain severance clauses in case of proved losses for indigenous communities. And they are agreements signed by a small number of individuals without the affected groups as a whole due participation and in due respect for the free, prior, and informed consultation. So overall, these contracts contain many abusive clauses. Recently, in negotiations of Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement, we have been listening to parties lobbying to have land-based removals on the projected removal activities of the mechanism. So let us be clear here. Voluntary carbon markets are false solutions. They are nothing less than a license to pollute that the rich and the powerful can buy and produce several harmful consequences to marginalized groups, such as indigenous peoples, women, Afro-descendants, and local communities. Now, let me give you some examples to support my argument. First, a survey carried out by a Brazilian law firm based on data extracted from the Verra platform, the main certification company operating in Brazil, showcased some of the land and tenure implications of this market, carbon market, for Brazil's diverse socio-territorial fabric. Through this investigation, it was discovered that out of 69 projects available for evaluation, 11 have total overlap with areas of collective use, 22 have overlap with public lands, 23 are developed in private areas, and the remaining 13 projects are not available at all on Verra's systems, either with complete information or are not just fully accessible. I'll give you a second example, which is Portel. Portel is a tourist municipality in the Marajó archipelago in the Brazilian state of Pará, which has historically been the home to indigenous peoples, extractivist communities, and peasants. A joint report by the World Rainforest Movement and the local Rural Workers Union, STTR, showcases how the REDD Plus Carbon project selling offset credits to companies such as Air France, Boeing, Bayer, and Samsung were linked to digital land grabbing in the region, as well as systematically disregarding the requirements of free, prior, informed consultation as set out in the 169 Convention in the International Labour Organization, to each Brazil as a signatory. In Portel, together, just for you to have an example, the 4 then existing projects covered an extensive area of more than 700,000 hectares, which equals to almost 30% of the territory of this municipality, and is also equivalent to about 20% of Switzerland's surface area. This case led the state's Environment Secretariat to ask an investigation that finally did prove the link between the carbon projects and the fraudulent registration of rural properties, resulting in the cancellation of 219 registries in the Rural Environmental Registry. In Portuguese, we call it CAR, as well as the suspension of another 735 registry showing inconsistencies in the declared data for further investigation. So just to finalize, I think it is important to say that cases are ongoing. We are right now discussing in Congress a Brazilian ETS, emissions trading systems. And this emission trading system presents a dangerous innovation in relation to other experiences, since it intends to absorb voluntary carbon credits such those as REDD Plus, for national and international offsetting purposes and into the compulsory market, therefore greenwashing voluntary carbon market malfunctioning. Also, one auto-declared major company in the business called CarbonNext claims to have over 1.5 million hectares of land in the Amazon, and this company just received a major investment by Shell, which turned the oil company one of its most important shareholders. Also, this company occupies the Brazilian National Council on REDD Plus in the best example of flawed multi-stakeholderism, we can go on, but I'll just stop here. So, but I do want to close by saying that monetized land-based solutions are not solutions at all. They make vulnerable populations even more vulnerable. They violate land and tenure rights and increase conflict and deaths in territories. Thank you.
Now, REDD Plus, project-wise, has the most credits on the voluntary carbon market, about a quarter of all credits to date. But strange thing is that the studies that have been done suggest that REDD Plus is not designed to address the most important commercial drivers of deforestation. And so that's large-scale agriculture, cattle ranching, logging, mining, etc. There have been a lot of studies coming out lately evaluating REDD Plus offset projects. And if I quote one such study by the Barclay Carbon Trading Project, it says that a key finding of this research is how widespread and significant over-crediting is for REDD Plus crediting methodologies all across all quality factors. Previously published studies found that flawed baselines alone likely resulted in over-crediting of 92%, i.e. projects are issued 13 times more credits than their climate benefit. In addition, forest carbon accounting methods used by project developers resulted in estimates 23% to 30% higher than independent estimates. So just a para that I have quoted from one study, and if we now go into various other, like I can take one couple of projects from each continent, and before that, we should see how this plus in REDD is being interpreted at this point of time. Like sustainable management of forest in REDD Plus actually opens the doors to commercial logging operations in old-growth forest and indigenous peoples and forest-dependent communities' territories. Enhancement of forest carbon stocks, meanwhile, could result in, as is already being experienced in Indonesia, in the conversion of lands, including primary forest, into industrial tree plantations. So if we now go into big projects, like Kariba REDD project in Zimbabwe, one of the world's biggest carbon projects, offset projects, REDD Plus. And the investigation has come out, exposed how it is basically becoming a money laundering project. The proceeds by the CEO of the company which was running it says that the proceeds are going into a tax haven, a bank account in tax haven where he could even trace it. And so he devised this untraceable way of moving the money from there to the tax haven just to get around the fact that Zimbabwe is sanctioned by that tax haven, And so he just blatantly tells that at any point of time he could be in jail, and I can carry $4 million in cash in my pocket. So this kind of, and then if you, and this is like registered by Vera. And then if you come to Kenya, the Kasego REDD project, recent investigation by the Kenyan Human Rights Commission and SOMO, apart from burning down houses, apart from huge displacement, widespread sexual harassment and abuse. That's been reported there. If you now go to PNG, Papua New Guinea, in 2022, it has just issued a kind of a moratorium on carbon offset projects. And there are allegations that carbon credits worth $100 million were issued from 39 potential REDD projects by an Australian-based carbon company, which was just fraud, and a top ministry official was suspended. And going into like Cambodia, if you say Cambodia Cambodia's most boasted Tumring REDD Plus project. And in August 2021, a report published by the Korean Federation for Environment Movement revealed that large-scale deforestation has taken place since the project started. Indonesia has just taken away the license of that project, which is Tumba. I'm just giving you the name. Yes, Rimba Raya Biodiversity Project for violating regulations. It has already issued 33.6 million carbon credits. So this is the thing that we are seeing across the world. And so I think what is coming out is that, you know, this cannot work. And therefore, the direction, our attention and actions to the underlying causes of deforestation must be done in a very different mechanism. And we have to work to reverse the local, national, and international policies that promote them. And I think another mechanism really to reduce the deforestation and forest degradation has to be found out. And the best way is, again I am saying, to give it to the indigenous peoples, women and local communities to see that how they protect our forest, conserve our forest, and we will get more result out of what we are getting for the last 20 years in this odd kind of, you know, fraudulent offset projects attributed to REDD+. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone on the panel for giving us this incredibly important overview. It's a reflection that needs to happen now, and it needs to happen now before we go any further. We've had 17 years of REDD+, with resulting in a license to pollute for big polluters, fraud, tax havens, sexual harassment and abuse, and ongoing violence in indigenous peoples' territories, women, Afro-descendants, and local communities. This has to stop. The fact that Article 6.4 supervisory body is even considering this as an offset and the mechanism database is beyond comprehension. It's the Article 6.4 supervisory body rushed through an appeals and grievance program that was decided on in April that doesn't even include real human rights language or the rights of indigenous peoples. In addition to that, they will say, well, we're going to do a sustainable development tool that will uphold the rights. But we have not seen action on this, and it's very doubtful because we've seen how so-called safeguards actually play out on the ground. These are false solutions, and including removals inside of any kind of a huge global offsets program will never, ever deliver on anything that will stop deforestation, uphold the rights of indigenous peoples, or reduce emissions. The planet is burning. This is climate chaos. We need real action now. Indigenous peoples have answers and ways forward. And with that, I will just say thank you all, and we'll hold questions for the hallway. Thank you very much.
If there is one.